spring break, March 16th, 2012. Cedria, well, prior to that date, she had just finished playing basketball and was going into and practicing for track. Well, she would come home and she was like, Mama, my fingers feel funny. They tingling. My feet feel funny. I'm like, well, you got to get used to that track. And, she was like, no, Mama, I'm just tired. I'm like, girl, you be all right. Thinking she trying to get out of track. So this went on for about 3, 4 days. Then her sister came over. No, Sunday we went to church. They went to church, and when they came home, they said, "Mom, Cedria fell at church," and I'm like, "Fell at church?" Then her oldest sister was like, "Well, Mom, I came over yesterday, and she fell coming to the door." Well, a light bulb went up, and I'm like, "Something not quite right." So that Monday, I called her doctor, and they had her to come in that Tuesday. So she went in that Tuesday, and I was telling him, he was just a regular family doctor. And I was telling him what was going on with her, and I'm like, something's not right. And I was like, look at her. At that point, she could walk, but she was slow and kind of leaning on you. So I was telling him what was going on with her, and he was like, well, we'll draw some blood and everything, and you should get your results back. Call back by Friday to check her results. Okay, they drew her blood, whatever. This was that Tuesday. By that Thursday, I had went out to eat with some coworkers celebrating her birthday, and her dad called and he was like, "Baby, you're gonna have to come. We're gonna take her to the hospital because she's just crying and in pain." So I'm like, "All right, I'm on my way." So when we got there, two of my coworkers, Robert McGee and Dietrich Lang, we pulled up. Well, Cedric was bringing her to the car. He was literally carrying her. And they were like, we finna go to our car, and they were like, well, we'll take you. So he put her in the back seat, and we went to Hillcrest ER. When we got there, she was trying to stand up, she couldn't. So they went in and got a wheelchair, came out. We put her in a wheelchair, went in, checked her in. She was saying she was cold. They gave her a blanket. So finally, I think we waited maybe an hour, and they got us back, and I don't remember his first name, but his last name was Dr. Smith. And once we got in there, and I was telling him what was going on with her, and he looked at her and observed her, he automatically was like, he knew something was wrong. And he walked out the room, and he came back in, and he said, "Miss Taylor, I'm going to send y'all to McLean's Children's Hospital. I would like for a pediatric neurologist to look at her." And I'm like, okay. That was kind of, I'm like, "Sir, that's fine. I just wanted to find out at that point what was going on," because it was to the point where she couldn't even walk then. So they transported us by ambulance to McLean Children's Hospital. We got there. By the time we got there, it was like 2 a.m. They had a room ready, got us in the room. Once she got settled in, a team of doctors came in and was questioning us and going over everything with us, trying to find out what was going on. They did a MRI, X-ray, CAT scan. They did the spinal tap, and by the next day, they came back in and set us down, and they basically told us they had diagnosed her with Guillain-Barré syndrome. I'm like, okay, sir, what? The first 2 questions I asked him, was it a cure, and is it hereditary? And he informed us there's not a cure, and I'm like, okay. He said, but there's 2 forms of treatment. And I was like, okay, what are the 2 forms of treatment? And he was like, plasmapheresis and IVG. They say it's normally followed after a flu vaccination or a shot or either a viral infection or something. And she hadn't had any of that. She hadn't been sick, so I was like, no, she's been fine. You know, so that kind of puzzled them a little, but they still diagnosed her with that. And like I said, I had never heard of it. I'm still looking like, and I asked them, was it basically something like cancer? Could she? And they were like, no, So I was glad to hear that, and I thank the Lord for that. And one of the nurses went out and Googled it or whatever and brought me a lot of information back because she knew I was still confused. So at that point, they started up the first treatment. At this point, her blood pressure was high. They could not get her blood pressure down. They started on gabapentin. The second day she was in, she couldn't walk, but prior to the second day, she could, use her hands. By that second day, she couldn't even feed herself. She couldn't even lift a spoon or anything. So it got to the point where we had to feed her. I had to feed her and everything. One of the things that was going through my mind was I was glad they found the diagnosis. And I was glad it was something that it really wasn't a cure, but she would overcome it. They told us normally people, it's very rare. They said normally people with Guillain-Barré, it could last from weeks till months, sometimes years. So they had given her at least maybe a year to be back, where she was.
I was just confused, like, how can this girl, athletic girl, who did all these sports and then body is just getting weaker and weaker. So I was just hurt. I was just confused and I was angry too, because didn't nobody believe me. Well, they didn't listen. And when they finally did, it was, like, kind of late. But I'm just glad it just stopped where it stopped at. Because if it would have came up some more, I would have been in a coma. So I'm just grateful for that. And I was like, am I going to walk again? Will I be able to play sports again? Because sports was the main thing that I was focused on. And my mama, she just told me not to worry about it. I need to get the help to get better now and don't worry about, sports or none of that.
I'm not going to say I was upset. I don't know. I know you're not supposed to question God, and I didn't. I just prayed, and I just knew everything was going to be okay. So I was okay with that, and her strength helped me. She didn't do a lot of crying. She didn't want nobody to feel sorry for her. She kept a smile on her face. So that gave me strength. And she never broke down. And I'm glad she didn't, because I think I would have just, I don't know if I've been able to handle it, but due to her strength gave me strength. I think we strengthened each other, And her dad I think he was more emotional than I was, that she was, because that's my baby, and I didn't want to break down because I didn't want her to break down because she was being so strong. So that gave me strength throughout everything. She gave me strength because she didn't break down. She didn't give up. She always stayed positive.
So how did you remain optimistic throughout this entire ordeal? What kept you to remain positive?
Just my family and friends just coming to see me, making me laugh, and just praying to God that it was not serious, and just giving me the strength that I needed.
Normally, a lot of people that's been diagnosed with Guillain-Barré, it's to the point where they're put in ICU and have to have a trach because it affects their breathing. Hers stopped, and so hers didn't go up as far. She had no feelings below her knees, and it stopped going. It stopped like right here. Everything else was okay, but they still treated her, or they wanted to treat her with speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. So once they did the IVG treatment, she still hadn't really got any better, and her blood pressure was still high. She was still in pain. If you touched her feet, she was just in just pain. I literally had to tote her from her bed to the bathroom, and I think I put her feelings as like pins. When you walking, like your feet's asleep and you trying to walk, that's how I associated her pain. And I was like, that is a horrible pain. So I literally toted her from her bed to the bathroom, everywhere. And the nurse was like, we can help you, we can help you. I'm like, that was just the nature in me as a parent. They were like, you need to work here, because I just did everything. They told me how, and I would do it. And they did the treatment. They started her on gabapentin, but we found out the dosage wasn't high enough. So we stayed over there. She stayed in McLean's Children in Temple for what? About 3 weeks, and then she had a caseworker, and she came in with some rehab. They wanted to send her to a rehab because they knew she would need physical therapy, and occupational therapy would help with because she couldn't use her hands or walk. So they transported us by ambulance to our children's house at Baylor, which is a children's rehabilitation center. So we got there, and they wanted to start therapy, but due to her blood pressure, they still could not get her blood pressure down. So at that point, I think we were there maybe 5 or 6 days, and her blood pressure just couldn't get down. So they sent us to Children's Hospital. Once there, they put in ICU and called in a pain management team, because her pain, they had asked me, she hadn't had any blood pressure problems. So they put her blood pressure, high blood pressure was due to pain. So they put her in ICU, called in a pain management team. Once they got involved, they upped her gabapentin. They got it to a dosage where it was getting better. Then they put her on like 3 blood pressure pills. So with the gabapentin high dosage and the 3 blood pressure medications, her blood pressure was stable, because it was to the point where she was stroke level. That's how high it was. So with that combination and the 3 blood pressure medicine, her blood pressure finally came down. But once we got there and they saw she had already had the IVG treatment, they wanted to do the second form of treatment, which is the plasmapheresis, but they had to get her blood pressure down. So once they got her blood pressure down, they did the procedure, which normally the tube inserted in your neck, but with her age, they put it in her upper thigh area, which was like a minor surgery because it was a tube. So while in ICU and her blood pressure better and manageable, they went on to start the plasmapheresis, which is, I consider it it's like, I put it as like kind of a dialysis machine, because it took out her bad blood and was replacing it with good blood. Her blood, it like took something out of her blood and then put it back in her body. Well, normally they do that treatment 5 days. They did hers 7 days, every other day. Um, After that, she stayed in ICU maybe 6 days. Then they put in a regular room, and we stayed there, and they did the treatments. Finally, we stayed at the hospital maybe 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. They released us, went back to our children's house at Baylor, where they again tried to start her therapy, which her blood pressure was okay long as she was laying down. When they would come get her for therapy and start, they was monitoring her blood pressure, it would go back up. So the team was to the point where her Guillain-Barré was one of the worst forms that they had known. And at that point, they told us her prognosis would be maybe 2 years at the most. It was going to be extensive OT and PT. And at that point, it was really nothing more they could do. Really,